know you're out here somewhere. What do we have here? Hey? I think we're on the right track. What was that? Crikey, there she is. That's one majestic beast. A rare breed if there ever was one. Not too close, you don't want to spook it. Wow. In a natural habitat and all. Let's go have a look.
The death of the small car, at least in this part of the world, is a bit of a chicken or the egg debate. Are automakers killing them off so they can be replaced by more profitable crossovers, or are people just not interested in buying them anymore? Now, personally, I think it's a little bit of both, but that doesn't change the fact that more are dying with each passing year. But Nissan isn't ready to give up on the segment just yet, and it has given us a new Versa sedan, even though it just killed off the Micra hatchback. But what I want to know is how much you have to sacrifice in the name of affordability. For more expert car reviews, don't forget to share our channel and subscribe so you can catch some of this and maybe even a little of that. Cars like this really are an endangered species these days, so it's a bit of a surprise to see a brand like Nissan bringing a new one to the market here. And don't forget, we just lost the Hyundai Accent in Canada for 2021. But really, that's where I see this thing picking up, both in price and in practice. They're pretty similar cars overall. Now, I will say that Nissan is employing one of the oldest tricks in the book, because there is a base trim that starts at right around 18 grand before tax. That does include the freight fee, but that's for a car with a manual transmission. And I don't think many of you out there are going to be interested in that. That's just to keep the advertised starting price as low as possible. So if you do want the automatic transmission, you're gonna pay about $1,500 more. And the base trim is the only one that comes with that manual. There's a CVT in all three trims. It's just that the top two, it's standard and it's optional in the base one. Now, when you look at that price, it's not that cheap compared to the Nissan Micra that used to be available in Canada. But there is way more to this car than that thing ever had, especially in the base model. Just take a look in here. I've got power windows and locks and air conditioning. That's stuff we kind of take for granted these days, but it wasn't included in the base Micra, and you do get it here. And you also get some good stuff like front and rear auto braking, forward collision warning with pedestrian detection. You can even get lane departure warning and blind spot monitoring in here. That's pretty impressive considering this is a very basic subcompact car. Now, as I'm sure you would expect, Nissan didn't fill the base trim with creature comforts, so you don't get heated seats or Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. But the brand also found some other efficiencies in here, and they are pretty funny. Just take a look at this flimsy little armrest here. Not only is there only one on the driver's side, but you don't get one at all in the cheapest trim, which is pretty hilarious. But good news, I am driving the fully loaded SR trim, so I get that armrest, as well as this upgraded paint job for right around $23,000 before tax. And to put that into perspective, that's about the same as you would pay for the cheapest version of the slightly larger Sentra with an automatic transmission. And here's another way I was thinking about it earlier this week. Now, I once upon a time was the proud owner of a 1998 Toyota Tercel. It was about as sexy as a pair of cargo shorts, but as far as economical transportation went, it's as good as it got, especially back in those days. If you wanted to buy one of those new, the cheapest one would set you back right around $13,000, but that was for a car that didn't even have airbags. Now, adjusting for inflation using the Bank of Canada calculator, because I'm the journalist and my brother is the accountant, well, that's about $20,000 today. Now take a look at that in context with this Versa. It's actually pretty good. And just think about how much more car you're getting here. I'm not just talking about features either. I'm talking about the fundamentals of this thing. This is just a lot more car and a lot better of a car. Yes, it is a lot bigger than that Tercel was, but it just feels a lot more substantial and stable. I know, again, the size is a part of that, but the point here isn't an apples to apples comparison. It's that Nissan didn't skimp out on the basics here. As far as safety goes, as far as drivability goes, this thing is really impressive. Here's a case in point. Just take a look at this steering setup. Now, it wouldn't be unreasonable to expect some bump steer in a car like this. You know that sensation when you go over a pothole or a bump in the road and the steering veers violently to one side? There's none of that here. It actually feels really nice and solid. The way it cruises around, it is very impressive the way it's packaged. And yes, I know that's a testament to modern power steering systems just as much as it is to this car. But again, it just goes to show you that Nissan didn't cheap out on the basics. And the other thing this has going for it that the Tercel didn't, this isn't terrifying to drive on a windy day. And my Tercel driving over a bridge with strong gusts of wind was really like cheating death. It had those tiny pizza cutter wheels and it would just blow all over the place. But this just cruises around with so much confidence. And then there's all kinds of features that didn't even exist back then, or you could only get in more expensive cars. Touchscreen infotainment, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, heated seats, blind spot monitoring, those lane departure and collision warnings. There is a lot to like about this car, and the evolution of the subcompact is fully on display here. It's also a little bit of fun to drive since it's so small and nimble, and I'd even go as far as giving the engine some credit. Now, it only makes 122 horsepower and 114 pound-feet of torque, and yes, this SR trim does have a continuously variable transmission, but it really makes the most out of those numbers. My only real complaint is that the CVT is very buzzy when you get on the gas, but there is more than enough passing power here. They've done a great job of engineering this thing where it doesn't feel especially gutless. And if you need just a little bit more pep, there is a sport mode with this button here that's hidden on the gear selector, and that'll spike the revs a little bit if you need just a little bit more juice to get around some slower moving traffic. Is this thing gonna win you any drag races? That's a resounding no. At least not unless you're up against a big guy in a pedal car. But I don't think any of you out there actually think that that's what this was built for. All of you know that this is basic transportation that doesn't burn much gas, and it does a really good job there. Officially, it's rated at 6.7 liters per 100 kilometers, but earlier this week I had it down in the high fives without even trying. No, I didn't have it in the sport mode, but I wasn't drafting transport trucks either. I was just cruising around the way I would on the daily commute. But a word to the wise, if your drive to work is more than about half an hour, you're gonna notice some serious issues with this driver's seat. Forget lumbar support or heat. Foam density is a driver's best friend, and this thing is like moving away in the middle of the school year and having to start all over again. It is bad. And I know I'm a big guy, but it has nothing to do with my size. It's just so thin. It's very cheap. You can tell that's one of the ways that Nissan cut costs in this thing. In another way, there's no folding armrest in the back seat, and there's only one cup holder on the back of the center console for your passengers to fight over. Bit of a strange choice, but there are bottle holders in either door. The other thing about that bench seat, well, it does fold in a 60-40 split, so if you need to move longer items, you can do that. But just like the little Kicks crossover, it doesn't fold flat with the cargo floor. You have this really big ridge in the back. That's not a problem if you're putting skis and stuff like that in there, but bulky items are gonna be a problem. I don't get that at all. I really wish they would make it flat with the load floor. I'm not trying to re-engineer this thing here, but it's definitely an issue that Nissan could solve if it just lowered the seat in the back a little bit. That would also give you more headroom in the back, which this thing desperately needs. Now, going back to that trunk for just a second, it's actually pretty big. I was surprised I was able to fit Patty, our cargo testing pedal car, back there. That is very impressive for a subcompact car, but one complaint the hinges are exposed so they drop down. You need to be careful when you're putting stuff in the back. Let's say you put some delicate items in there and you close that trunk. The way the hinges swing down, you're gonna crush them. And that's a problem with Patty, and she's rattling against those hinges. But again, it's a trade-off I'd be willing to make for the size of the trunk. And then getting back to that back seat, well, there is a ton of legroom back there, but that's what makes the headroom such a problem. This is no friend of 5-star rideshare ratings, but up here there's no problem, and that's because there is no sunroof offered, but that's a sacrifice I could live with. There's definitely more headroom up here than I had in that Sentra that I drove not too long ago, as well as a car like the Toyota Corolla. Now, as far as cabin width goes, you can tell it's more narrow than cars like that, but it definitely doesn't feel too cramped. You are sitting a little too close to the person next to you, but that's to be expected. But it doesn't feel that bad, and a big reason why are these massive windows as well as this gray headliner. Really gives you the sense of just a little bit more room, and it also means the windows give you great outward visibility. Everything about this is very user-friendly, right down to these controls. Just take a look at the HVAC. You get big buttons and knobs, some basic buttons on the steering wheel, and then this 7-inch touchscreen for infotainment. Now, it is a pretty basic system. There's no maps or navigation information, but don't forget, you get both Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, so you can use your own Google Maps, and that's way better than any sort of software you can get in a car anyway. And they work without issue. And then the other thing you get in here that is a bit surprising for the price is satellite radio. I love to see that in a car like this. Then going back to those safety features, no, there's no lane keep assist. It's just basic cruise control, no adaptive stuff. But you do get a government mandated backup camera as well as blind spot monitoring. So even for a car this small, lots of peace of mind here. You know, the Versa isn't the cheapest car out there. That title still belongs to the Chevy Spark, but that thing's a lot like the Nissan Micra, where it definitely feels like a cheap car in the lower trims. But then when you look at the top trim, as far as a direct comparison goes, it is very similar to this in terms of equipment, but this just feels like a more substantial car. There's a lot more to it and a ton more space. Yes, that thing is a hatchback, but this is just a lot roomier. Is it perfect? No. These seats are terribly uncomfortable, the ride quality's a little bit rigid, and it feels a little tinny and hollow when you close the door, but it does feel like a pretty good machine for the money. To recap, I like the reassuring way the Versa drives, the value it delivers, and how efficient it is. I don't like the weird corners that were cut like the armrest situation, the way the back seats don't fold flat, or how uncomfortable the seats are. Are there sacrifices that come with affordability? Of course, and the biggest one for me is probably that seat comfort issue, which could be a big problem if you plan to use this for long-haul commuting. I also don't get that whole one armrest situation, which is perfectly fine during a global pandemic, but it's going to be an issue once you start carpooling again. But no matter how you look at this, it is vastly better than the subcompact cars of old, and all for about the same money. I really hope this isn't the end of the line for cars like this in Canada, but it's nice to see this Versa giving this dying segment a new lease on life.